Hello, this is the Circularity Catalyst podcast, where regenerative thinking meets real-world strategy. I'm your host, Ken Alston. Welcome back to the Circularity Catalyst podcast. We're back here today with a terrific guest, someone who decided to make a difference and took it upon himself to actually do something. My guest in the studio today is Andy Keller. He's the CEO of Chico Bags, and he specializes in reusable bags and go-to wear. And before we begin, Andy's very kindly offered to give a gift out to our viewers and listeners today, and so look out for the details of that in the show notes. So, Andy, before we started the recording, we talked a little bit about how you got started. Would you mind giving our listeners and viewers a little breakdown of what you do and how you actually got into this sustainability work?
Yeah, well, my personal mission, my company mission is to help humanity bag the single-use habit. So we're focused on helping people get away from single-use plastic. We see plastic, or the overuse of plastic as being probably the second biggest threat to life on Earth, next to climate change. And single-use plastic is the plastic that you use once and throw away. And so all of our products are designed to help people reduce single-use plastic in their lives by giving them easy to use, convenient solutions that are reusable and durable, and fun to use. So I got started 20 years ago. I had a great job. I just bought a house and then I got laid off. And I had a brand new mortgage and I was trying to figure out what to do with my life. And I ended up fixing up my house. I brought the stuff to my local landfill and I just stood there. It was the end of the day. I remember it was windy. And what I saw were plastic bags everywhere. They're blowing around. They were actually blowing out of the landfill into the adjacent ranch land where cows were grazing. And I thought to myself at that moment, I'm like, you know what? I've been lied to my whole life. Like I was told, give a hoot, don't pollute, make sure you recycle, don't litter, don't be a litter bug. And all of those bags were disposed of properly. People did the right thing, yet they were still getting out into the wild and causing harm. And I never really thought about plastic bags. I was a plastic bag user at that point. Never thought about, how many I used, what they were made out of, what happened at the end of their life. And all of that just hit me at a very visceral level. And then I started thinking, the entrepreneur, unemployed side of my brain kicked in. And I started thinking like, well, why don't I use reusable bags? They've been around for years. And kind of aha moment for me was like, well, it's not integrated. I don't have it with me when I need it. How am I going to remember to bring a reusable bag? And then I'm like, oh, if I had one in my pocket, wherever I went, I wouldn't have to remember it. I'd have it. And that was the aha moment. I bought a sewing machine that day, bought fabric, and that was 20 years ago. Today, we've helped millions of people kick their single-use bag habit.
And 20 years ago, that's, I've been in this work almost 40. But, when you go back decades, like you were saying, it's the sensibility wasn't there at the time. So, that was a very early aha moment for you.
Yeah, my timing was perfect. That was back in the day when people were debating paper or plastic. And they'd ask that question at the register, paper or plastic? And it was just this dilemma, which one? And reusable bags, since then, over 50% of the world the municipalities or governments have put some sort of restriction or law in place on plastic bags. Because plastic bags essentially are the poster child of unnecessary waste. They're like this thing that they blow in the wind, they get caught in trees. Some countries have, mockingly declared it as their state flower because they're so prevalent.
It's sort of funny, not funny, right?
Yeah. Plastic bags, really are the symbol of this linear system that we've created and is completely unnatural of extraction, use, and then disposal. And it's just this thing that it's been a target. And so I guess my timing in it was great because I came in right before all of that, became.
And it's still, even though you started it back 20 years ago, it's still right over the moment. I mean, where I am in central Virginia, my local county only put an ordinance in the last couple of years to put a tax on if you choose to take a plastic bag at the grocery store. You can still choose them; they still have them, but obviously there are far, far fewer there because
Yeah.
people don't want to pay the extra toll, right? And so it's predominantly paper and not plastic. But so that's giving another nudge in the right direction for what you're trying to
Yeah.
achieve.
And that is changing the dynamic. Just having a fee. And what they've found in the research is, stores for years gave an incentive. They're like, hey, you bring your reusable bag, we'll give you 10 cents every time. Um, However, it never had any real impact. The people that were going to use reusable bags used them, the people that didn't. And the incentive didn't really change the behavior. However, as soon as they said, you know what, if you want a plastic bag, you got to pay 5 cents. That changed behavior overnight. And the municipalities that did that saw an 80% reduction in use simply by asking the question. And asking the question stopped people in this kind of invisible behavior that they weren't even knew they were part of. And they were like, you know what, actually, I could just carry this stuff out. I don't even need a bag.
Yeah,
And a lot of
it
times,
wasn't even an issue in your mind. You just took whatever there was, right? And what there was predominantly plastic. I mean, now the checkout machine actually has you put in how many plastic bags are you using today, right? To add the tax. So it's right there in front of your face, as you're checking out.
yeah, I estimate, half the time, you don't really need a bag. You easily carry it to the register. You can easily carry it out with you, so the
Yeah, if you're just
unnecessary.
topping up on the milk or something you've run out of, you can carry that and your car keys at the same time.
Exactly, exactly.
If you could look back over the 20 years and give yourself advice with the benefit of 20 years of hindsight, what would you tell your starting out self 20
Wow,
years?
Ken, that's a great question. What would I tell myself?
Well, you've obviously hung in there, right, for all of
Yeah,
this time. I'm sure there've been ups and downs. Um, are there any particular highlights or lowlights that are really instructive that other people can learn from as we try to get others to do what you did and change behaviors, take actions, and do more than talking?
the thing that comes to mind, that I learned through this journey is sometimes the worst thing that can happen to you is the best thing that can happen to you. Um, and the experience I had was, I would dress up in plastic bags. I have this costume of 500 plastic bags, which is
Right.
what the average American uses in single use plastic bags in 1 year. And I would dress up because most people never think about how many bags they use. They, you know, they go away to that magical place called away. And I call it the bag monster. And I started touring the country, traveling the country, showing people the bag monster. And that's when I felt like I was really making a difference. And well, I got noticed by the plastic bag industry. The plastic bag
Right.
industry saw me wearing this bag monster costume and they didn't like it. So they ended up filing a lawsuit against me for irreparably harming their business. And when a big company sues a little company,
Sure.
that's a bully tactic. The idea is to make you stop. And because you don't have a small company does not have the resources to fight a big company like that. So it was like the worst thing that could ever happen to me. It's like they threatened to take everything that I've worked for, including my house, because they're suing me for, more money than I had. And what ended up happening is it was the best thing that could ever happen to me because what happened was it put me on, it raised my profile.
Sure.
you know the news media loved it because it's a David versus Goliath story. The thing fully backfired on them. It created more publicity for my company and for the movement, made them look like fools. And then the environmental and the scientific community came, to basically back me up. Like what I was saying about plastic bags was not only true, it was understated. And as a result, they ended up dropping the lawsuit. And it was the
Yeah,
best
so
thing that could ever
a little
happen.
intestinal fortitude was needed at the time, right?
Yeah, it was scary. Like,
Yeah, sure.
sleepless nights, how am I going to do this? It's stressful. And, and I could have backed down too. I could have caved and said, okay, I will stop wearing the costume. I'll change my website. And I didn't, you
Oh,
know?
good for you. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's a good lesson because, bully tactics are alive and well. And the important thing is, as a community, when we stand together, it's just like in the schoolyard. What you learned about bullies at school was
Still applies.
alone, alone, you can't beat the bully. But if everyone stands up together, you can actually, oh, you can win.
I assume that your business is both B2C business direct to consumers, people who want to buy a bag or bags, but possibly also to B2B for people who want their own bags. How does that work?
Yes. So, we sell to consumers, through our own website. We sell to businesses like natural grocery stores, Whole Foods, where people can buy our products. A big part of our business is doing promotional products. So, in the promotional industry, businesses buy promotional products like stress balls to give out to, as advertising. And, that industry, it's commonly called trinkets and trash, because most of those items get thrown away very
Right.
quickly, like 80-90% within the first year. People don't hold on to it. A lot of it's just poorly made, it's cheap, and people don't value it. And so when you think about an investment of marketing dollars in promotional products, sometimes if you're not careful, it could be a very poor investment. And so we've been trying to change that industry by making high quality, long lasting, reusable promotional products. And what we've found is the work that we've done is we actually, even though our products are more expensive than the typical promotional product, we have an excellent return on investment because of their long lasting and they're
Yeah, the
useful.
utility value. Yeah.
Yeah. So people are using it often. People typically use our products for 10 plus years, and they're unique. So they're creating conversations, and that is the magic of a promotional product. Is if you can use a promotional product and it creates a conversation about the company that gave you the product, that is marketing gold. That's what you
Sure.
want.
Yeah,
That's
they're
what
getting
grows your
their
business.
return. Yeah.
Yeah, and most people don't think of promotional products that way. They don't think about the long-term return on investment. How many
Right.
conversations is this product going to create? They just think about, oh, I got X dollars. I need to give out this many. I'm going to buy the cheapest thing possible because that's what my budget is. But rethinking it is what I really encourage people to do: is think about your goal. What is your goal? What are you trying to achieve? And then work backwards. Will this achieve that goal or not? And when we think of it that way, a lot of the promotional products don't make sense.
Where as we record this, we're living and working in challenging times. There've been a lot of challenges to the sustainability movement writ large. Where do you see the future of sustainable business going?
The big thing that I think about is there's a lot of people trying to do good work. And the issue with sustainability is I call it the playing field, right? So, through policies, we have created a playing field for business that does not incentivize doing good. It actually incentivizes doing bad. And when I say bad, businesses do bad things either intentionally or unintentionally when they externalize costs. So when I say externalize costs, that is costs that are not built into the price of the product. It is costs that are borne by taxpayers, for example, or the environment or future generations or a marginalized population. You think about opaque supply chain where products are being made and there could be slave labor or child labor in that supply chain. That is an externalized cost. It's causing harm that is not, you know, in the
Not
price tag.
immediately self-evident. Yeah.
Yeah. So, those, and there really is no incentive to do better because of what we call shareholder primacy. So when you look at, I guess, the dead economists that talk about, the only real purpose of business is to create shareholder value, and, the invisible hand of business, that it will work everything out for the highest and best good. It's just not that notion
Except
is,
it doesn't. Yes.
it's dated, it's broken, it doesn't work. So I think the solution really is for businesses to is to change the playing field through policy. So businesses need to be responsible to more than just the shareholder. They need to be responsible to their employees, to their customers, to other stakeholders, to to the places where they do business, and own their whole impact, 100% of their impact, as much as possible. And what that looks like is that you don't have an opaque supply chain. You understand your supply chain. You go visit your vendors. You make sure that you're paying equitable wages, that you're not harming people. You're not harming communities or the environment in the places that you're operating. That's important, and it's not being done. But if businesses were to do that in the supply chain, that would make the biggest positive impact in the world. You know,
Well, and I think that you put two words together there that I think most people don't realize, which is positive and impact.
yes,
Because when most people talk about impacts, it's always assumed to be negative. Because there are a lot of negative impacts, and that's the unsustainability, right? The unsustainability is the negative impact, but it doesn't preclude positive impacts and things
yes.
getting better. And so I think that's a super important thing to me. It's at the foundation of everything I do when I talk about sustainability, is to say, look, we really want things to get better. We want the beneficial impact, and we want to reduce the non-beneficial or the harmful impact. So differentiating between the two, or even appreciating that there are two, is a good place to start.
I mean, that's an excellent point. I think businesses are the most powerful force for good in the world, and we need to create the policy and the framework that incentivizes businesses to do the right thing. One example of this is like recycled content. So it makes a lot of sense to close the loop to make products out of recycled content. However, currently, like when you think about plastic, virgin plastic, so that means plastic that's made out of oil, that's extracted out of the ground, is cheaper than recycled content plastic. And
Because of the subsidies to the oil industry.
exactly. So that's an example of the playing field being rigged for bad behavior. Right now, it's cheaper to buy virgin plastic, and that is the wrong incentive. It should be cheaper to buy recycled content, and that could be easily fixed by either reducing the subsidies for virgin oil extraction or increasing the subsidies for recycled content, or so that you're leveling the playing field, or ideal scenarios give recycled content a little bit of a advantage, and then business, in the pursuit of profit, will automatically choose recycled content, which will close the loop,
Yeah,
which will
the
create
incentives
less
will be
waste.
moving them in the right direction.
Exactly. Like right now, doing good doesn't make business sense unless it's creating some halo effect, in your marketing world. And then as soon as your profit is challenged, a lot of those programs go away.
I spend a lot of time talking about sustainability with a new mindset, an updated version of what was started 40 years ago, and linking it to the circular economy, which has become, a buzz phrase. I worked in the early days of cradle to cradle design, and so it's deep rooted in my psyche. And I know in your work, you've you do encourage people to send back the bags, right, when they're no longer fit for purpose.
Yes.
How's that working out? Are people getting that message?
Yes. So we have a take back program, not just for our bags. We actually take any type of reusable bag, regardless of who made it. And that's our take back program. And that's, what you call extended producer responsibility. That is owning the end of life of your product. And I think anyone who produces a product should own the end of life of a product. That's part of being, taking full ownership. And that's what responsible business means today. Um, and what we get back is mostly not our bags. We get people sending us shoe boxes of reusable bags all across the country. And mostly what we're getting back are the bags that they don't use. It's the closet full of bags that, they've collected by going to trade shows or, forgetting their bags and buying yet
Right.
another one of those 99-cent reusable bags at the
Yeah, so at
store.
the trade show, they give you the little baggie to start with to put all the brochures in as you're going around from booth to booth, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So, people have a ton of reusable bags. The problem is they forget them at home and in the car. That's the problem that the products that I make solve is because they're pocket size. They fit in a pocket, help you remember your bag. And so what we're getting back are people's bags that they don't want anymore, and most of them are totally fine. And so what we do is we work with food banks, and we inspect and then donate these bags to food banks to distribute food to a population that doesn't necessarily have the disposable income to buy reusable bags. So it's a win-win. They're getting their food, they're getting reusable bags, they get into a reusable bag habit as well.
I get a lot of young people when I'm speaking at universities and colleges, who get it, right? They're smart people. They get the issues that we're facing that are myriad issues around sustainability, of which, the waste that we're talking about is just one. But they get stuck with this, "But what can I do?" question. They feel small, they feel insignificant, and their desire to do something more is easily blunted by not knowing what to do. You were in a particular set of circumstances where you were able to just move past that question, right, and actually do something. What advice would you give to someone who may not be in exactly the same circumstance you were in, that just gave you that extra nudge or need to do something? Where can they start?
There's a lot of I guess the first thing I'd say is that different people are geared for different types of behaviors, right? So even though like I'm an entrepreneur, I love, business, I love, this experience, it's not for everyone, so depending, ideally it's something that you're passionate about and you find some alignment on something that makes you happy, something that some way that you could contribute to being part of the solution, so personal action, of just not buying trash, or not buying things that are going to become trash quickly, is a very easy thing that an individual can do. Lessening your personal impact, is and taking ownership of your own kind of surroundings and your own
So be more
life.
thoughtful about what you're spending your
Ex- ex-
hard-earned money on, right? And
exactly. You could think
make smarter choices.
exactly. So you could think of every dollar you spend as a vote for what you want in the world, and voting every day for what you want, or not want.
When you
And
started when you started, was your work, did it start local and expand out? How did that work? Is that another aspect that you could start where you are locally?
Yeah, my advice to people who are entrepreneurially minded is to take the first step, right? So that day I bought a sewing machine, some fabric, right? That was my first step. I made prototypes, I gave them to friends, I got some feedback. That was my next step, and so I just took one step in front of the other. I had no idea what I was doing, but I just knew that what the next step was. And, I started small. I didn't quit my job. I didn't cash out my 401k. I was very conservative. I had two jobs. I did this on the side as my little side hustle. And then I eventually, it grew big enough where I could quit one of my other jobs.
Right.
And then it finally became my main job. Um, and and of course, not everyone's wired for this. It's risky. I was in a position in my life where, I didn't have kids. I didn't, have a lot of responsibilities other than my own. The only thing that I had was to pay for my house, and that was manageable. Um, so yeah, the advice is, find something that you're passionate about, and take that first step. It could be volunteering. It can be, just picking up trash. If you're into policy, that's where the biggest impact being made is, going to your city council meetings, going to your state capital, and advocating for the policy changes that are needed to level the playing field, to create the environment that incentivizes good behavior.
I think you can also think about going beyond just what you do, right, and collaborate with others. So there's the things I can do myself, right, and nobody else is determining my actions but me. But you can also gang together with others. Some of the work I do in the UK and Europe with a colleague from the fashion industry is highly collaborative in nature, bringing together groups of people, all of which have different skill sets, and creating essentially a cooperative. So that it's not just you on your own, it's you with several others with the same intentionality, right, to do good in
Yes.
the world, as you were saying earlier. And not only do you get that support of a community working with you, um, but it's more than just your effort; it's leveraging your effort. So I think there are both ways, right?
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. And people, we're as humans, we're social. So it feels good to connect with people and do these kinds of things. It meets some of our core needs as humans. To get out and enjoy life.
What's something that you do relating to sustainability and all these issues that you do behind the scenes that you wish clients and others could see? Something that's perhaps a little opaque or hidden right now.
Oh, that's another thought provoking question. Like, what do I do? Well,
Well, I think the repurposing, right, was one of the things you're doing, right? You're
yeah.
working with
So
the food banks. That's maybe not as visible to people as it's probably front of mind to you because you do it.
yeah, most people don't realize all the things we do. In the name of being taking full ownership of our impact. As
Right.
a business. I've traveled our supply chain. And I've visited. When you think about a supply chain, you got you're kind of what we call tier one supplier. In my world, that's like cut and sew factory. Then the tier two supplier is the fabric mill that makes the fabric. The tier three supplier is the company that makes the yarn. The tier four supplier, it goes
You
on
got
and
the
on and
dye
on.
the dye producer, right?
Yeah, the
Yeah.
people that are making the boxes, the people that are making the paint, the people that are making the carabiners, all these. This is the supply chain, and in the world, in our world, most of the damage in our on our planet, I believe, happens in that supply chain, and most products that you buy, the companies that are offering these products, most of them, in my experience, don't understand the supply chain. They haven't visited their supply chain. It's just like who can offer the lowest price for this thing at the quality that we need without even looking at it. And chocolate is like a prime example. When you buy a chocolate bar, the companies that are selling chocolate in most cases know that there's issues in their supply chain. Child slave labor is one of the major issues in chocolate supply chain, and it's not being fully addressed. They're not taking full ownership of the issue. They're saying it's out of their control. That, oh, that's a terrible thing, but what can we do about it? Well, they can do a lot about it because they're multi, million-dollar corporations, that are involved in the supply chain. So I think Yeah, that's something I do that I'm very passionate about, that I think if other businesses were to go visit the suppliers in the supply chain and see firsthand what was being done well or not well, it would make the biggest difference in regard to sustainability on our planet.
Yeah, I when in my trainings, I call it knowing everything that's in everything that's in everything, right?
Yes.
That's the going down the supply chain. It's
Mhm.
you really need to understand it at that level, even down to 100 parts per million of everything that's in everything. And even the
Yes,
dye that you're using to color the yarn may have 15 components in it.
exactly.
People don't realize the complexity of the supply chains, as you say.
Yes, or the shenanigans that can happen in a supply chain.
Well, yeah, I've done many a supplier visit, and you're asking about their processes, and you're walking the floor, and you see a bucket of a chemical that they never told you about, and say, "Well, what's that?" Oh, yeah, I forgot about that. And that may just be the one component that you didn't want in your material.
Yes, and that's another thing that that I'm passionate about is testing, third party independent testing and compliance. So for example, with recycled content, recycled content in my experience is 30% more expensive than virgin material. And when you think about recycled content, you got the plastic bottles, they're ground into chips, they're made into what they call pre-production pellets. These pellets are then brought to the yarn company where they're extruded in the yarn is then woven in the fabric is cut, made into a bag. Each of those points, there's an economic incentive for the supplier to dilute the recycled content to make a few extra cents, in that process. And you would not know because under a microscope, you can't tell the difference between recycled
Right.
content and
Yeah,
virgin.
the base polymer is the same. It's just where it came from. Yeah.
Exactly. So compliance, third party verification is critical in order to prevent greenwashing, in order to, stand behind your marketing claims.
What's one thing that you would like my listeners and viewers to walk away from knowing about you and your business?
Well, if any of your listeners are looking at promotional products and trying to promote their organization or business with the use of promotional products, I would invite them to talk with me. I have a lot of experience working with organizations, helping people maximize their return on investment to achieve their goals using promotional products. And I think a lot of people get it wrong when they're buying promotional products or they're not thinking about their goals. And so I would love to have the opportunity to chat with people. We're actually are giving away 100 free promotional bags a month, and we're having a contest. And I provided the link to you, which I know you're going to share with your audience. And if people wanted to learn more about Chico Bag, they can enter our contest, a chance to win 100 free bags, and have a conversation with me if they choose.
Well, that's excellent. And yes, indeed, I will put in the show notes a link um, to that competition, and let's get a lot more people involved in reusing their bags.
Yes, thank you.
Well, Andy, I really appreciate your time and for coming on to the Circularity Catalyst podcast. And for the audience, I will see you again next time.
Thanks, Ken.
I'm your host, Ken Alston.